For American troops fighting across Europe, the Pacific, and North Africa, food was more than nourishment. It brought a sense of order when everything else felt uncertain, a small constant in the middle of chaos. Even decades after the war, veterans could describe the taste and smell of their field rations with surprising clarity. Some foods they disliked, some they tolerated, and a few became unlikely favorites, but all of them remained tied to memories of fear, exhaustion, homesickness, and the deep bond shared among men who depended on each other. A single can of meat, a slab of bitter chocolate, or a cup of lukewarm coffee could turn a miserable moment into something close to comfort. These weren't fancy meals. They were simple, practical rations that kept soldiers moving from one day to the next. Yet many veterans recalled specific meals in foxholes or trenches with more emotion than any holiday dinner back home. Across thousands of interviews, the same four foods appear again and again, not because they tasted good, but because they marked the hardest days and the moments of relief that helped soldiers push forward. Here are the 4 WWII foods American GIs remembered for the rest of their lives. The C-Ration was the standard meal for U.S. forces throughout World War II, carried from the deserts of North Africa to the frozen forests of Europe and the islands of the Pacific. It came in several menu varieties, but one became unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. The beans and meat can. Officially, it provided solid calories. In practice, it was a dense, greasy mass of beans packed into a layer of hardened fat that clung to the inside of the can. Troops joked that the can itself was the only thing keeping it edible. Still, despite the constant complaints, beans and meat was probably the most widely eaten canned dish of the war. Veterans often recalled its unmistakable smell, salty, smoky, and vaguely metallic. Many disliked it at the time, yet remembered it vividly for the rest of their lives. A veteran from the 3rd Infantry Division once laughed as he told how he traded his only can of beans and meat for 2 cigarettes, thinking he'd made a great deal. That night, during a freezing rain halt, the cigarettes were gone almost instantly, while the hunger stayed with him until dawn. After that, he said, he never underestimated a can of beans again. Another GI remembered how his squad invented a game in the Ardennes, sliding unopened cans across the ice to see who could send theirs the farthest. They called it sea rat curling. Small moments of humor like that, he said, helped them stay sane. For many who fought on the front lines, beans and meat became a symbol of their wartime experience. Veterans who mentioned it years later often smiled, not because of its taste, but because it brought back memories of youth, camaraderie, and the simple goal of surviving one more day. Hardtack has a long history in the U.S. military, dating back to the Civil War. During World War II, it returned in the form of K-Ration biscuits, dry, pale squares, so tough that soldiers joked they could repair tank tracks with them. They were intentionally made to last forever, extremely low moisture, nearly unbreakable, and able to withstand almost any condition short of an explosion. They weren't created for enjoyment, they were engineered for reliability. Veterans often said the real battle wasn't eating the biscuit, but trying to break it apart. Some smashed it with the butt of their rifles. Others softened it in coffee to avoid cracking a tooth. Marines in the Pacific swore termites wouldn't touch them. Soldiers in Europe joked that even if the war had lasted another decade, the biscuits would still taste exactly the same. One soldier wrote home in 1944, telling his mother the biscuits were hard enough to build a barn with. She saved the letter for years. When he returned home after the war, she offered him a warm homemade biscuit as a joke. He politely declined, saying some memories didn't need revisiting. But behind the humor was a deeper truth. K-Ration biscuits were dependable when nothing else was. On long marches, sleepless nights, or days when supply lines failed, those biscuits were often the only thing available. Troops could rely on them even when everything else was uncertain. Another veteran recalled sharing his final biscuit with a buddy during the Battle of the Bulge. "It tasted terrible," he said, "but it helped us keep going." The biscuit wasn't memorable because of its flavor. It was memorable because of the moment. Hard, simple, and nearly indestructible, the wartime biscuit became a symbol of endurance and the determination to push forward under brutal conditions. If any wartime food achieved legendary status, it was Spam. Long before it became a punchline, Spam was considered a small miracle of industrial efficiency, inexpensive, shelf-stable, and incredibly versatile. American troops encountered it everywhere, aboard ships, in field kitchens, in Pacific outposts, and even in parts of Europe, where Lend-Lease supplies arrived. Today, many veterans recall that pink, glistening block of canned meat with a mixture of gratitude and amusement. In the Pacific, where refrigeration was scarce and fresh meat was almost impossible to find, Spam became essential. Marines fried it, sliced it, mixed it into rice, or ate it straight from the can when time was short. Sailors joked that after months of eating Spam, they were built out of preservatives. One naval veteran said, "If you cut me open in '44, you'd have found more Spam than blood." Beneath the jokes, Spam served a real purpose. It kept troops fed in jungles, on beaches, and aboard ships where supply lines were stretched thin. Some squads even created improvised recipes: Spam fritters, Spam stew, and the humorously named Spam a la foxhole, which simply meant heating it on the metal lid of an ammunition box. A Marine once recalled spending Christmas Eve on Guadalcanal when the cooks tried to create a holiday dinner. The main course was thin slices of Spam fried until crispy. They decorated the tables with palm fronds, and for a brief moment, it felt like home. He said it was the evening he learned how much soldiers could create from almost nothing. To many veterans, Spam represented American industrial strength, a product that reached them no matter how far from home they were. Loved by some, disliked by others, it became an unforgettable part of the wartime diet. For American troops, coffee wasn't just a drink, it was a necessity. Instant coffee packets appeared in nearly every ration, and soldiers drank them constantly. Some consumed 5 or 6 cups a day. They brewed coffee in canteen cups, tin cans, and even in their steel helmets when nothing else was available. Coffee helped them stay awake during long night watches, warmed their hands in freezing weather, and offered small moments of comfort in the middle of hardship. One infantryman described a brief pause during the Battle of the Bulge. When the artillery fell silent for a moment, he melted snow in his dented helmet to brew a cup of instant coffee. "It tasted terrible," he said, "but it smelled like home." For a moment, the cold didn't seem so unbearable. That cup of watery coffee stayed in his memory for the rest of his life. The D-bar chocolate came alongside it, a dense, high-calorie ration designed strictly for survival. It was intentionally bitter, extremely hard, and almost impossible to bite unless warmed. Troops joked that it was emergency chocolate that caused its own emergencies. Many used it as trade currency, others used it as fire starter. Yet the D-bar served its purpose. It provided quick energy during long marches or moments when stopping to eat was impossible. One paratrooper carried a bar during the Normandy jump. He didn't touch it until 2 days later, exhausted and hungry. "It tasted like rubber," he said, "but it kept me going." Coffee and the D-bar represented two sides of wartime life. One brought warmth and a reminder of home, while the other symbolized the harsh reality of survival. Both remained etched into the memories of the men who carried them across battlefields worldwide.